We start on time. So hello, everybody, and welcome to Raising Adventurous Eaters with my friend Katie Kimball. Katie and I are so excited to welcome all of the members of our Positive Parenting Solutions community, as well as our new friends. So I know most of you, but we have a lot of guests here, which is awesome. So for those that don't know, I'm Amy McCready. I'm the founder of Positive Parenting Solutions. I'm also the creator of the 7-Step Parenting Success System. And whether you are here with us live or you're watching the replay, you are in for an absolute treat. And I have been so excited about this class because you guys know I'm always talking about how to fill our kids' power bucket in positive ways, right? Because the more legitimate positive power our kids have, the less likely they are to exert their hardwired, non-negotiable need for power in negative ways, by like talking back or fighting us about homework or bedtime or doing their family jobs or sibling fighting, all of those power struggles that you have throughout the day. And one of the best ways to give positive power is getting kids involved in the kitchen. I talk about this all the time. So today, Katie is going to share really concrete strategies that you can start using right away to empower your kids in the kitchen, foster their independence and capability, and reduce power struggles around eating and mealtime. So it is totally a win for parents and for kids. Now, for those of you who are in our 7-Step Parenting Success System, the video lessons in steps 1 through 7, teach you all the discipline tools in our toolbox, all 36 of them. And then in addition to that, you have all of your advanced training modules. So the advanced training modules have the step-by-step solutions for those big power struggles, right? Like getting your partner on the same parenting page, bedtime battles, morning dawdling, chore wars, homework hassles, ending the entitlement epidemic, and so many others, including the advanced module on mealtime and eating battles. All right, so that one is a game changer for parents, but I want you to know that what you learn in this session is going to totally complement what you have learned in that advanced mealtime madness session, and it's going to build on that. So you are absolutely in the right place here. And it's one of the reasons that I actually love working with Katie so much is that she has been a lifetime member in our Positive Parenting Solutions course since 2014. She's one of our old timers. Although she's very young, she's one of our old timers. And her course methodology is perfectly aligned with what you're learning in the 7-Step Parenting Success System. So this is all going to feel very comfortable and compatible with what you're doing. So you are in great hands. Let me officially introduce Katie. Katie Kimball is the voice of healthy kids cooking, working to restore the health of our young generation one kitchen at a time. She is a cookbook author, a regular TV contributor, and creator of the Kids Cook Real Food eCourse, which was recommended by the Wall Street Journal as the 2020 best online cooking class for kids, which is amazing. So we are so grateful to have you with us, Katie. I'm so thankful that you're taking the time to serve our Positive Parenting Solutions community and our guests. So I will turn it over to you to work your magic.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'll just warn everybody, I do talk fast because it's how my brain works, and I want to respect your time and just cram as much value as we can into this hour. So I'm going to start out with something a little bit controversial. I want you to let your kids get hungry. I want you to let your kids get hungry so that they can build an appetite. I interview a lot of incredible food experts. And from one of them, Dr. Dina Rose, I learned that, if not letting them experience hunger is really a great disservice here, especially in America, but I think other places in the world too. We tend to feed children as soon as they are hungry. And so they don't even know anymore what it feels like to feel that hunger in their belly. So we need to think about hunger not as something evil, but as building an appetite. And as you'll see in the presentation, an appetite is a great way to get those kids eating their vegetables and other things that we make for dinner. Now, whether your kids already eat great and you just need a little encouragement to keep it up, whether they are vying for that picky eater king or queen crown, or whether you could just use some tips for being consistent with healthy eating, you're definitely in the right place, because I believe that the most powerful way to show kids that they matter and that they make a difference in the world is to teach them to cook. And I've really always been a teacher. I've always had the heart of a teacher. I used to torture my poor little brother by playing school all the time. And fortunately, I was not such a mean teacher when I actually taught 3rd grade in a real classroom. But I've always had that sort of ability to break concepts down into little pieces. And I continued using that skill actually. After I left teaching, I continued using that skill to teach adults how to cook at my blog, Kitchen Stewardship. And there we help families stay healthy without going crazy. And we help people balance, let me just get on the right place here, help people balance their family nutrition and health, environment, their budget, and their time. And over the course of working at Kitchen Stewardship, I heard from a lot of moms that they don't always, they weren't taught to cook. Like I think a lot of people in my generation, the generation of parents right now, we really weren't taught to cook as kids. And so I had sort of a realization experience when my son, Paul, he's there in the orange shirt, was 10 years old. He's 15 now. He's at driver's training right now. Be still my heart. But when he was 10, he had to do a how-to speech at the end of his 4th grade year. And I kind of nudged him to do food. And he taught his class how to make homemade guacamole. So I had to teach him how to use the chef's knife. That was the part I had always done for him. And I had to bring the chef's knife to school. You don't exactly throw a chef's knife in a 10-year-old backpack and send them off these days. So I got to watch the speech, which was awesome. I remember that moment, standing there in the 4th grade classroom. He took that chef's knife, thwacked the pit out of the avocado like Martha Stewart taught me. All the adults in the room went, they thought he was a goner. It's not every day you see a 10-year-old with a chef's knife. Now, I knew he was completely safe, and I love seeing my kids exceed the expectations of other adults, right? So guacamole had been Paul's like signature dish since 1st grade. He always made it for family parties and potlucks and, you know, impressed all the adults. And I loved that feeling. But in my own head, I had a moment like, Katie, wait a minute. What are you doing here? Because guacamole is the only recipe he knows how to make. As amazing as guac is, we cannot live on guacamole alone. I knew that if I wanted the healthy habits that I was setting at home around the dinner table to last, to sustain when my kids left my house, I had to empower them to do it for themselves. And that day, standing in that classroom was the moment I became a kids cooking teacher, started taking it really seriously. That was the summer that I created a whole curriculum and taught my kids, and they each got to invite a friend to make sure that I do it, because that's my weakness, is like, I don't feel like it. And we just created this whole curriculum. And because I kept hearing from my audience at Kitchen Stewardship that a lot of people in my generation weren't taught to cook, I knew that other moms would really need this as well. And my kids, though, started teaching me about what it meant for them to learn to cook. I thought that it was just like life skills, that it was preparing them to launch, preparing them to leave my house at age 18. And quite quickly, I started learning it was so much more powerful. The emails began coming in, and one of the first was from Mabel's mom. And Mabel had been spending a lot of time with her mom, actually, in doctor's offices. She was 6 years old, and she had just beaten cancer. Her mom, Lisa, wrote and said, I want to teach her to cook because I want to reconnect with her with something she can do that will be helpful for rebuilding her body after all of this chemo. And I was like, oh, well, that's more powerful than I realized that, you know, these little cooking classes would be. And then I heard from Aiden's mom, and Aiden has Down syndrome. He's 11. Oh, I just realized I'm not actually sharing my screen, am I? Look at little Mabel. She's so cute. And Aiden there is 11, and he has Down syndrome, loved cooking, but his mom felt like she didn't know where to start. She didn't know how to keep him safe in the kitchen. But with our classes, implementing our safety techniques, he was like bursting with confidence, started planning and cooking his own meals, and was constantly asking mom to videotape him on her phone because he wanted to be in his own cooking show, right? So this is what builds, I believe, genuine self-esteem. In this world of participation ribbons that mean nothing and kids know it, like this is what we need. And I said in my own family, my kids started showing me how much more powerful teaching kids to cook could be. And with them, I realized that they were just building this massive sense of confidence and this creativity as well that, you know, teachers say we're really lacking in our digital age. 3 years ago, they started cooking once a week so that I could go volunteer at high school youth group. And I got to tell you guys, this one day, they had like a pound of ground pork and a vague idea they were making breakfast burritos, and it was 5 o'clock. They didn't even have a recipe yet. And I'm like, well, I gotta go. I'm leaving for youth group. See you guys later. Totally thought that this would be one of those wonderful opportunities to learn from failure. And when I got home a few hours later, my daughter Leah, she was 10 at the time, she met me at the door and said, Mom, we made up the breakfast burritos. We put some homemade sausage in a pan and some peppers and onions, and we made homemade tortillas, and we just kind of made up the recipe, Mom, and everybody loved it, but there's none left for you. And I've never been so happy to be both hungry and wrong that they didn't learn from failure. They were actually able to infuse that evening with their creativity. And that's why I'm so passionate about getting all the kids in the world in the kitchen, because we see that connection like Lisa found. We see that confidence like Aiden and my kids felt, and we see this amazing creativity. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how getting kids in the kitchen is going to help those power struggles at the table. Now, I've been a positive parenting follower and student for many years. So what you will learn today, like Amy said, will complement all of that perfectly. So in the next 40 minutes, for those of you who are planners, and this is where the worksheet begins, so bust that out if you haven't yet, you're gonna learn how to win every time you play the game of dinner. Now, the kids win too. Everybody wins. That's the great thing. I will teach you the snack time rule that will completely change the way dinner feels at your house. We'll talk about why the timing of your vegetables makes a huge difference. And I'll teach you 21 parenting toolbox phrases. I don't know if you know what decision fatigue is, but it's based on this idea that we have this finite number of good decisions we can make during the day. That's why by the end of the day, we're not disciplining as well. We're eating too much ice cream or the whole sleeve of crackers or cookies because we've run out of good decision-making power. And so today you can make the decision here and just use these phrases, whip them out of your pocket, and you don't have to think as much or make decisions at the dinner table when the children are giving you discipline situations. We'll talk about how to leverage your unfair advantage in the kitchen, again, so that everyone can win. And we'll tie it all together with that Kids Cook Real Food approach to connection, confidence, and creativity, both inside and outside of the kitchen. I'd love to hear in the chat what you're most interested in learning today, what you're excited to hear. I got to find my chat again. I lost my window. Where'd it go? Won't even let me see. Well, hopefully, that's why we have Sonia in the chat. Oh, good. There it is. There it is. And I know I've seen, we have like, I believe we have a 72-page Google document of your questions. So luckily we've condensed those down, but you all are like very curious, very passionate, very intentional parents. And I love so much that Amy has brought you all here together today. And we're definitely going to work with a lot of your biggest struggles. So the process we're going to talk about starts with preparing the space, lead with your ACE, and keep a poker face. So let's unpack each of those right now. When I say prepare the space, that's what we're talking about at the very beginning when I said, I want you to let your kids get hungry. We need to have them build an appetite. And I really believe that a good dinner starts with proper snack time procedures. Okay? So preparing the space means you're going to build at least 90 minutes of a buffer between any meal and snack that you serve. Okay, so if your kids are eating a snack and they're finishing at 4:30, dinner better be at 6 o'clock. If dinner's at 5, wind that back so that they're finishing their snack at the latest by 3:30. You know, it's summer right now. It's been felt weird like summer for like 5 months because we're recording this during the pandemic, the quarantine and all the craziness. And so my kids know, like between 9:30 and 10:30, they better have morning snack. If they've missed it, it's too close to lunch. They've missed it between 3:30 and 4:30. They better have that afternoon snack. If they've missed it, too bad. My little one, Gabe, is 5, and he'll wander in about 2 o'clock and say, is it time for snack? We're like, nope, it's too close to lunch. You gotta wait, because we want the kids to know, again, what it feels like to be hungry. We also say all the time, no more than 1 snack between meals and no seconds on snacks, okay? Because what's the purpose of a snack? It's not to fill you up. The purpose is simply to cut that hunger and get you through to the next meal. So it's not about having a big meal session and getting all the way full, right? So my kids know no matter how many compliments they give me on this amazing snack that I've served, no seconds on snacks. And that's one of those phrases that we just like to whip out. We don't think about it. We're not making a decision then because we've already made the decision about how we treat snacks in our house. Now, one of my superpowers is to make things fun and easy to understand. It's what I do in the eCourse with our fun safety phrases. And so today we're going to call this MS90 one and done, right? Between a meal and a snack, 90 minutes, one snack only, you're done. No seconds on snacks. And I saw a question about habits, and we'll talk a little bit about shifting from old habits as well. So once your kids are hungry, once you've prepared the space and they have an appetite built up, now you're going to lead with your ACE. What do you think your ACE is? Oh, yes, it is the vegetables. And we had many, many, many questions come in. How do I get my child to eat more vegetables? One mom said, especially the green ones, because they seem to have an aversion to that one. And so this is your answer. How do you get them to eat more vegetables? You get them hungry first, and then you serve the vegetables first, because science tells us, and you know this when you're at a restaurant, the first bite tastes the best. Second bite still tastes pretty good. But our bodies are designed so that every bite we take tastes a little bit less amazing. If it didn't, think how much we'd eat, right? Things just don't taste quite as good at the end of the meal as at the beginning. That's the power of building an appetite. Okay, so fun fact, you'll see, in these pictures, we've got two examples. One is veggies with a ranch dip. And did you know that eating vegetables with the healthy fat helps the body to assimilate the vitamins in the vegetables? So it's a really, really good idea to have a healthy dip like that one, which is made by my kids. That's our homemade ranch dip. And that not only helps the kids assimilate vegetables, helps adults too, assimilate the minerals and vitamins in the vegetables, but also that helps keep people satiated longer, right? So that's a good thing, especially if you can serve veggies as a snack. The second thing that I love to serve at the beginning of a meal is a blended soup, okay? 3 reasons blended soups totally rock. First, nobody can pick out the vegetables. They can't pick out the green things. Second, it's fun to decorate them. You can see we use like sour cream in a little sandwich bag with the tip snipped off to make faces, and we'll put a little dill on for like a goatee or some hair, and just have fun with it. When kids can be engaged with their food like that, they're more likely to give it a try. And number 3 is to use a straw. I do not know what kind of magic pixie dust is sprinkled over straws, but I can guarantee you if you serve that blended soup through a straw, at least twice as many veggies will go in your kids, because it's new, it's novel, it's fun. Quick tip, just snip the straw in half and use a shallow bowl so that there's not a lot of like flipping of the straws and the messes. Okay, now there is one catch to serving this blended soup, and that's that nothing else is on the table. Play restaurant, serve the soup, tell your kids the main course will be ready in like 10 minutes. Even if you don't need 10 minutes, just tell them it'll be ready in 10 minutes. It's like the first course in a restaurant, because we want the kids to sit with those vegetables. Even if they don't eat them, we want them to hang out and get a chance to become friends with them without being distracted by everything else on the table. It's a fabulous, fabulous technique. Now we have to talk, when we're talking about what we serve for dinner, we got to talk about this little guy. Okay. And he is a short order cook. And I saw many confessions in my email. Marlia, Emily, Monica, Ryan, Kelly, Nicole, all of you and more confessed to making multiple meals for your kids. And oh my goodness, you guys, are you not exhausted? That sounds exhausting to me, consistently making 2 or even 3 different meals. I want you to commit, take a deep breath, no more short order cooking, okay? Because when we make special meals for kids, we lower our expectations, okay? We're telling them, this is what I expect you to eat, and I don't expect you to eat the rest. We need to raise our expectations and serve what we want them to eat instead of what we know they will eat. And there is a way to sort of transition slowly, right? Like maybe for a while, I know like one mom, daughter wants to eat pasta and ketchup every single night. Probably not a habit you want to indulge. Potentially to shift that, you serve a very, very small serving of pasta and ketchup along with 1 bite of everything else that you might be making, okay? We'll talk about the 1 bite later and how to present that. And then maybe after a while, you tell the daughter that if she wants pasta, she has to make it herself, but she still needs to have like 1 serving along with bits of everything else, right? So you can sort of like bridge the gap by making small changes. My friend down the street, Cherie, is a great example of this. When her daughters were 2 and 4, she picked up the blue box of mac and cheese and like absentmindedly read the ingredients and thought, oh, I don't even know what this is. I'm pretty sure my kids probably don't need this. No, she's a really good cook. And she was like, I can definitely find a homemade mac and cheese recipe, make it, and it'll be delicious and it'll be good. Okay. So she finds this amazing homemade mac and cheese, makes it, presents it at the table to the 2 and the 4-year-old girl. And how do they react? Oh, the weeping, the wailing, the moaning. Oh, it doesn't look right. Oh, it doesn't smell right. Oh, it doesn't taste right. Oh, so, my friend said, this is your dinner. You may eat what's on the table. And if you are hungry, I will see you at breakfast. She's kind of stubborn and sarcastic like that, which is why we get along really, really well. Now, this was not the end of the story. A month later, Cherie makes mac and cheese, homemade again, presents it at the table. And of course, it all went great, right? Now, you guys know it takes longer than that. The kids weeping, wailing, moaning. It doesn't look the same. It doesn't smell the same. It doesn't taste the same. And she said, this is dinner. You may eat what's on the table. And in the morning, I will see you for breakfast. Now, it took a few months, but because of being consistent, Cherie was able to create what I call a new normal. Okay, we know that our families will shift habits, our kids will shift habits. As adults, we shift habits and traditions all the time. And so if we can be intentional about designing that new normal, it may be a little bit painful in the transition, but then it happens, and it's there, it's the new normal. And she did not serve the boxed mac and cheese anymore. And in fact, because the girls were only 2 and 4, they even started to forget that the boxed mac and cheese existed after a while because they were used to the new normal. Until they went to grandma's. Of course, that's another topic for another time, those grandmas. That's the only time that they ever saw the craft box. Now, we have to spend a little time talking about Ellen Satter's division of responsibility. And if you're in the positive parenting course, you've heard about Ellen Satter. She's amazing. And she's going to talk, give us the philosophy, the way of thinking about our kids at the table, right? And so the division of responsibility is that parents decide what, when, and where to eat, okay? What food is served, what time is dinner, and where are the bottoms in which chairs, right? That's where your responsibility as a parent or caregiver ends. Kids get to decide whether they eat and how much they eat. This is a little revolutionary sometimes. I want to rename it the division of worry, because really, what should we worry about as the caregivers? What we serve, what time we serve, where we serve it. That's it. The kids, we can stop worrying about how much they eat. Okay, we can stop worrying about that. And if you can do that, it's an amazing weight lifted off your shoulders to stop worrying. Now, I see Ellen Satter's division of responsibility is very good philosophy and the way of thinking about it. But sometimes we don't exactly know how that plays out practically. So that's where I come in. I'll give you the practical toolbox terms for respecting this division of responsibility. Quick, memorable phrases, just like we do in the eCourse. And that's what Step 3 is all about. Step 3 is going to keep a poker face. Oh, I see. Whoops, that was a while ago. Sonia wanted me to remind everybody to change your settings in the chat to all panelists and attendees. That way everyone can see the questions. Because I think what's great about being together as parents, as caregivers here, is that we know we're not alone. I guarantee you are seeing questions in that chat and you're like, oh, that's my house. That's totally my house, right? People have similar struggles and we can, come together and have community and get through those struggles together. So you've prepared the space. Your children have an appetite. You're using the MS-90 one and done snack time rule. You lead with your ACE. You start those vegetables, whether it's raw veggies in a dip, blended soup, or any other concoction of healthy vegetables that you can think of. And then it's time to be consistent. Whoop. Time to keep the poker face and stop worrying about what happens next. Okay, so we're going to talk about 21 terms for your parenting toolbox. We talked about that decision fatigue. You don't want to be making decisions at the dinner table. That's a bad idea. You might be running out of decision-making power and make bad decisions. So if you can just whip out these phrases without thinking, you'll have more consistent parenting. Okay, now these won't all work for you, but some of them will. And so this is where you definitely want to be writing down in your worksheet, like what these phrases are and how you think they might work. We're going to divide this into kind of 3 sections about when you talk about food with your kids, when you're serving new foods, and then those weird times of trying to leave the table or kids saying they're hungry. So first, get out your big parenting eraser. And when you talk about food and your kids, we have some phrases we need to take out of our vocabulary, okay? I don't want you to say my kids are picky eaters anymore. I know you've been doing it, type it in the chat. We're done with that. Because if we label our kids, we are putting them in a picky eating box. And no child in the world is gonna bust out their hammer and break their way out of that picky eating box. Okay, most of the time they will only raise their own expectations to where we set ours. Okay, so and we also don't want to say, oh goodness, they won't try that, right? I had one of the ladies in Costco who was giving out, it was like salmon, I think, on a cracker, and my 2-year-old wanted it. I said, oh, of course you can try it. She said, I'm so glad you did that. I have way too many parents coming by who say their kids ask me if they can have one, and the parents say, oh no, they won't like it. Right? That's no, 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 no. We cannot say that about our children because we want to use what Carol Dweck calls that growth mindset and growth language, right? And well, that's coming up on another slide. I'm getting ahead of myself just a little bit. We want to say my kids are still learning what they like, which is totally true. I guarantee you can all think of a food that you did not like as a child that you really enjoy or at least tolerate as an adult. And in fact, throw those in the chat. For me, it's beans, legumes. And I've now written a whole recipe book using beans, but I never touched chili, refried beans, all that stuff as a kid. No way. And so it's really good for our kids to hear those stories, make that your dinner time conversation. Oh, blueberries, Brussels sprouts, that's hilarious. Hot sauce. Yeah, my little 5-year-old says, I'm daddy's spicy boy. Can I try some hot sauce? It's funny. But again, growth mindset. We can always change. I love to tell kids your taste buds aren't grown up yet. There's a little reverse psychology there too. And I think that's the reason I have my 2 littlest boys, 5 and 8, they love feta cheese. And I have a feeling that it's because one time I said, oh no, that's for mama's salad. Oh, well then they want to eat it, you know? So your taste buds aren't grown up yet is fun. And I do want to encourage you. I mean, I see in the chat, some of you are saying, but I'm a picky parent. I have a picky husband. Well, you can remedy that too. And I really want to encourage you to be the example, right? Talk about those stories, talk about these fun like foods that you're throwing in the chat that you didn't like, but now you do, so that kids can see real examples of that and be bold. Say, I'll try that, even if you hate it. My husband will try cucumbers about once every couple months, and he always hates them, but it's this hilarious event in the Kimball family because the kids they all love cucumbers, and they're like, Dad, they don't even taste like anything. He's like, oh, they're just terrible, but he tries them to be like a good example, right? Love that about my husband. Now those moments, those button pushing moments, moms and dads, right? When you're serving something new, it's so difficult, right? It can be so difficult. What if they don't like the new foods? And even worse, what if they say ew or gross before they've even tasted it? When you've worked really hard on dinner and you're really focused on, serving healthy foods, this is hard to take as a parent, and it can get those tempers flaring. So in our family, we teach the kids that they have one choice, and exactly one choice of phrase when they dislike something that they're eating. And they are only allowed to say, it's not my favorite. We train them by every time they say ew or gross, I say, oh, it's not your favorite? Okay. Oh, it's not your favorite. We just correct. And then after a while, if they're not getting it, we say, in the Kimball family, we do not say ew or gross. We say it's not my favorite. Side bonus of this is that when you're out at someone else's house or at a party, other people think your children are very polite. Oh, did he just say it's not my favorite? That's so polite. So that's great. We want to raise really polite kids. But what if they're starting to pull it's not my favorite before they've even tasted anything? Super annoying, right? We tell our kids, you can't taste with your eyeballs, so we need to have a taster bite. Now, I used to call this a no thank you bite, but I was I was taught, see, I'm still growing and learning. I was taught by an amazing food expert, Dr. K. Toomey, that we don't want to use that like negative language, which totally makes sense. So now when we're serving vegetables of any kind, usually in my house, or anything that I know kids might not totally go for, I'll say, would you like a taster bite or a serving? Would you like a taster bite or a serving? They get to choose how big their serving is, but they don't get to say, thank you about having it on their plate. Okay, so they always have to have at least a taster bite. And this is just, this is a powerful way to encourage those first tastes. Oh, did it just go too far? Whoops, yes, it did. And my favorite story is from a mom named Erin who has a 2-year-old, and that 2-year-old would say almost every night after she attended this presentation, almost every night, 2-year-old would say, this isn't my favorite. And she and her husband would keep their poker face and say, okay, that's fine. And then the 2-year-old would proceed to eat nearly everything of the not my favorite food, which is so funny. And it shows the power of agency, feeling like you have control over your situation. It shows the power of giving kids choice, right? And I know Amy talks about the positive power bucket, right? So when you can give kids choices, 2 choices that you like, or choices of how they respond to food, that really, really helps a lot. And it won't always work. They don't always eat everything, but sometimes they will. Now, I know some of you are sitting there going, oh, Katie, not my kids. They don't even do the 1 bite. They won't do the first taste. It's not going to happen. You said you were going to reduce power struggles. I'm seeing a power struggle waiting to happen. And I understand. And we don't want to have that power struggle. So if you've got a child who is exceptionally stubborn or extremely selective in their choices, not picky eater, right? We can call them a selective eater. You can tone it down just a little bit. If they absolutely will not do that taster bite, then you just say, it's okay to experience your food. And this is Dr. Toomey again, amazing food expert. She says kids don't have to eat anything to have improvement in picky eating. So you tell your kids, if you're not ready to eat it, you can just learn about it. This bite is going to sit on your plate. And I know as you do that some of the kids, that's hard for them, even just to have the bite on your plate. One strategy you can use is to have a little dish next to the plate, and you can allow the children to move that food with their hands or their fork, because exposure matters. We'll talk about that later. Move it to this sort of discard bowl or plate. And that allows them to have choice and agency. And I know a lot of you were writing in with kids of all ages leaving the table far too often. And it may be because they're feeling an aversion to a food on their plate. And if they can move the food away from their body, they might not have to move their body away from the table. How powerful is that? If they have the choice to move the food away from their body, they might not feel such a need to move their body away from the table. And they can just learn about it. Okay, so they need to have it on their plate, but they can have like a second plate to move it to if necessary. But they've got to have that exposure to the food. Really, really important. With our very selective eaters who are just going to, learn about their food and experience it, I like to say a little salt makes everything taste better. And this is the new choice you can give these very selective eaters. You may smell it, lick it, or taste it. SLT, a little salt makes it all better, right? And I hear from a mom, Jenny, who said, I tried smell it, lick it, taste it with salmon, which all 3 of my kids claimed they absolutely despised. 1 smelled it, 2 licked it, and 1 of the lickers ended up eating the whole meal of salmon. Glory, glory be. So again, it's just giving kids other options. Smelling it is a good one because it doesn't have to cross that barrier of the mouth and actually enter their body. So that gives them, again, a lot more power and control. If you feel like your child is very selective, and I know many of you already know you have a sensory processing diagnosis, that's another whole thing to work through. And I would just really encourage you to grab this link, kitchenstewardship.com/SPD, because sensory processing disorder it's a real thing, and it's something that can totally be worked through. And what I love about the story in that article, written by Mary, one of my writers, is that she worked with her kids' SPD. She worked within the boundaries of how their sensory system worked, but still only offered them healthy food. And she's a massive success story. Her kids eat like everything, but they all have their certain preferences about how they eat it. Super fascinating. If you feel like, just read it and see if it fits you, because you'll learn a lot from Mary, because she's really awesome. Now, as you're keeping this poker face, Oh, there, the liquor, the smell it, lick it, taste it. So a 3-year-old child had SPD. I totally forgot I even had this story in there. And I know a lot of you are experiencing kids who are like physically gagging at the table, and this is so difficult. So mom tried smell it, lick it, taste it. And it took 3 years, y'all, 3 years for licking to turn into nibbling. And now at 7, he's starting to at least take those required bites. So, we did not get into the parenting game for it to be easy. We did not get into parenting thinking that it would be short. Parenting is a long process, and we've got to be invested in it for the long run, right? Now, just a little reminder to those of you moms who have kids in the ages 2 to 5, okay? Because I know a lot of you wrote in as well that, oh my goodness, my child used to eat spinach and sweet potatoes and everything went down the hatch, and then they turned 2 and now they don't. I don't know what happened. This is so frustrating, right? So it's, research says, statistics say that about 50% of 2 to 3-year-olds are technically picky eaters. I kind of think it feels like they all are, but it's good for them. It's healthy and it's normal, because their job as 2, 3, and 4-year-olds is to learn about the world. Their job is to test those boundaries to see where their control ends and your control begins. And their job, get back here, slide. And their job is to figure out, where they have that control. So at least a quarter of them will outgrow it completely naturally. Only 5 to 10% of kids remain being true problem feeders after the age of 5. So I just want to send hugs through the internet to all of you whose kids are in that 2 to 5 phase, because man, they will seem picky on some days and not picky on others. And it's very tumultuous and very frustrating because you don't always know what to expect. But your job, again, is to choose what you serve, when you serve it, and where you serve it, and hold out for that magic point somewhere between kindergarten and first grade when most of the kids will eventually come around, right? And I love that Amy is reminding in the chat, the more emotionally invested you are in what and how much your kids eat, which is supposed to be their responsibility, the more power the kids will push back around eating and meal times. You've got to keep that poker face, and just trust that your 2 to 5-year-olds almost always will come out of it if you can stay consistent throughout that time. Okay, another big button pushing moment is when kids are saying, I'm hungry, right after dinner, or when they eat 2 bites and say, I'm full, can I be excused? Oh my goodness, such a button pushing moment. Very frustrating, I know. So what are we gonna do? We need some phrases for that. First of all, let's teach our kids what kind of hungry they are. We know building an appetite in our tummy is good hunger, but we've all experienced I'm bored hungry. I think a lot of adults have I'm sad hungry, and right now especially I'm stressed out hungry. Or just I see food. Oh, someone is trying to feed me and it's not really an appropriate time and I'm not hungry, but I'm going to eat it, right? We have, as human beings, these amazing fluctuations of hormones. We have a hormone that builds up and tells us we're hungry. And then as we eat, we have another hormone that comes in and sort of cuts that one off and tells us we're satisfied. And if we keep eating, it tells us we're full. Children are born with the natural ability to feel that hunger and satiety. But when we feed kids when they're not hungry and go beyond the feeling of fullness too often, we begin to break those systems. We begin to break our ability to listen to those hormones. So your job as an adult, or as a parent, or a parent or caregiver rather, is to just allow your children to feel those natural rhythms of their body, and don't break it by teaching them to not listen, right? So that's where, when it's snack time and they say, I'm hungry, I want more, no seconds on snacks. We already talked about that with MS90 one and done. And I think it gives kids, even little kids who can't tell time, gives them a lot of hope if you say, don't worry, your next eating opportunity will be in half an hour at dinner, or your next eating opportunity will be in an hour and a half at snack time, or whatever it is. They know that they're not going to be starving forever. They have a goal, and it just helps them feel more comfortable with being a little bit hungry, and that's good for them. Now, at the end of the meal, I know, so frustrating when kids are like, I'm full after 2 bites, and we don't want them coming back and saying they're hungry 10 minutes later because of MS90 one and done. It's not time to eat it. So here are some toolbox terms to avoid that clean plate club, right? I think that we are a little more advanced in our thinking maybe than our parents are. We know that it's not good to make our kids clean their plate and to have that quintessential like picture of the child just staring at the food and like finishing the plate as their ticket to move on to the rest of their evening. We don't want to do that. It's not about the clean plate. So instead of the clean plate club, let's use some of these phrases. Something that we say very often, almost nightly in my house, because I do still have a 5-year-old who forgets for some reason, you need to finish your first before having seconds. And that is the powerful phrase that you'll use for those kids who, when you serve maybe soup, some veggies, and a biscuit, they eat the biscuit, they play the compliment game. Oh, Mom, that biscuit was so good. Can I have another? And Mom's thinking, oh, he loves my from scratch cooking. Of course, I'll give him another. No. You say, oh, I'm so glad you love the biscuit, but finish your first and then you may have seconds. Okay. And just whip it out. Don't think about it. Pull it out of your toolbox, right? Too many kids, it tends to be the bread products where the kids will eat, if they eat those 2 biscuits or those 2 rolls or those 2 sandwiches, now they're full or they're at least satisfied and they don't have to eat all those other vegetables, right? So very important to say, finish your first before having seconds. It's very different than the clean plate club. You're not asking them to eat anything. They're welcome to be excused. And if you really want to encourage more variety of eating, pay attention to portion sizes. So if I was working with a 2-year-old who wanted that biscuit or that roll or that bread product over and over, I might give them a half or even a fourth, depending on how quickly they do get satisfied, just so that that's their serving. That's their serving, and they don't get to move on to having more bread product if they haven't eaten the rest of their meal, right? So that can really, really help. Now, on the flip side, we have a little, it's really important to say it's good to know when you're full. And when you use that is when those kids who say, oh, I'm full, and then they either come back for more in 10 minutes or like not more food, but like munchy crunchy snacks, or they ask for dessert. Oops, no, wait, oh, sorry. Totally flip that. Good to know when you're full. It's, oh man, it totally goes against my like innate sense when my kids say I'm full, may I be excused, and they have like half their plate left. I want to say, but no, like that was expensive and it took me a long time and I think you should finish it. It's like, zip the lips, Katie. I say, okay, it's good to know when you're full, you may be excused. And it's up to your family if they scrape into the trash or if they save it for another day, that's fine. But the kids often need the linguistics lesson. Right? When they say they're full and then they come back and ask for dessert, I say, oh, well, full means full. I mean, you said you were full, so I wouldn't want to put a dessert down into that little full belly because then you'd get a tummy ache and mommy loves you so much. I don't want you to get a tummy ache, right? Yeah, it's a little bit of parental sarcasm because I need that to keep myself, feeling positive and going through a whole dinner. But yeah, when they ask for that dessert and they've already said they're full, it's like, full means full. And then I'll remind them of being hungry will make breakfast taste so good. And, maybe we should get to bed a little earlier so you can get to breakfast earlier. Parents can win when the kids are trying to play that game too. It doesn't have to be a power struggle. Now, I do have some advanced parenting toolbox terms. We're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness for the last segment and a little more about desserts and how we structure those in the Kimball house. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what I like to call the unfair advantage. Okay, so we know, if you want your kids to eat healthier foods, you can serve more vegetables. You can change your language. You can use all these terms. You can set new routines like MS-90 one and done and get your timing right, raise your expectations. These are all incredible and powerful tips. But they do take some time. So you'd have to practice your patience for it all to make a difference. Or you can supercharge the process with a little unfair advantage. And it has to do with this bucket, okay? Research shows that people learn best by doing, right? By teaching. And when they're involved with food, they're more likely to try new things. So Dr. Nicole Berkins, who's both a psychologist and a nutritionist, perfectly suited to talk about this, taught me about the exposure bucket, what I like to call the exposure bucket at least. And what's awesome is that there are many, many ways to fill the exposure bucket. Okay, so what's the exposure bucket? You know that advice you get when your kids are toddlers and people say, oh, don't give up on carrots after one try. They need 10 tries to like a food. It's not bad advice. It's just not perfect because we know that all kids aren't the same. They're not all 10 try kids, right? Your child might only need 2 tries to love broccoli. Baby Katie might need 37 tries or 354 tries. That's that very selective eater that they need 354 times to put that broccoli on the plate. Oh my goodness, it sounds exhausting. What's amazing is that any experience with food counts to fill that tolerance. So if you've got to get 354 exposures to broccoli before your child will let broccoli pass his lips, it's awesome to know that shopping for the food, washing the food, cutting the food, serving the food, cooking the food, that all counts, plus that one little taster bite on the plate. Now you've got 6 exposures in one meal. So getting the kids involved before they even come to the table supercharges the process. And also, if you're getting the kids involved in the cooking, there's not that pressure. There's not that power struggle. They know they're not expected to eat it right then. So they're much, much, much more likely to make friends with those vegetables, to make friends with that food and feel a positive affinity for them. Yep, and I see there's some questions in the chat. We're just kind of pausing for a minute, skipping around a little bit because I want to make sure that we got to those advanced strategies right at the very end. So this is Dr. Nicole Berkins, and I'm honored that if you walk into her office in Caledonia, Michigan, you'll see our Kids Cook Real Food eCourse brochures because she says it helps support so many areas of kids' development, and learning to cook helps kids get comfortable with new foods. Now, Dr. Berkins works with those very selective kids who have like 5 foods they'll eat, maybe 20 foods that they'll eat, sensory processing issues, autism, ADHD. And she teaches her families that exposure to a variety of foods without pressure to eat them, like we just talked about, is vital to improving their diets. And that's why kids need to learn to cook. So I want to hear from you in the chat real quick. Not that you need encouragement because the chat's been happening. This is awesome. But just type me in the chat if you ever have trouble working with your kids in the kitchen because you don't always love the way it turns out. It's not Pinterest perfect every single time, right? Do you know that feeling when you're just not sure like how to explain things to your kids? People don't like being uncomfortable. And so we don't want that with the kids in the kitchen. Now, Patty from Colorado says her 5-year-old always asks to help, but like you guys, she never knew where to start. And so after just one class from Kids Cook Real Food, now the 5-year-old is cutting up avocados and lettuce for tacos, making a fruit salad because it's such a kid-friendly, safe way to learn. Now Patty knows what to do. I love these little kids. They share their favorite things about learning to cook, right? So 5-year-old Hellman likes cutting things. Liberty, age 3, loves scrambled eggs. And Maroney at age 7 already loves making up his own recipe. That's where we talk about that amazing creativity that kids find in the kitchen. So cool. I love that Patty shared that with us. And like many of you, Kate from Florida felt actually terrified to get her kids in the kitchen. I remember seeing that in the chat. Someone said, my husband is like terrified because it seems unsafe. And this mom, Kate, had so much anxiety about teaching them to cook. She didn't want to do it wrong. So having help from our Kids Cook Real Food eCourse made her more confident and made her feel much more at ease. And so now the kids are able to insert their confidence into the kitchen and cook as a family. And that's why we talk about this incredible connection like Mabel's mom felt, the confidence that you can see in all these kids cooking and this incredible creativity. It's so much more than building life skills for the future. Teaching kids to cook really is a gift to the family now. And so the question really remains is, how are you going to do this? How are you going to get kids in the kitchen? Because I hope you feel like, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to supercharge the process of getting them to eat better by getting them in the kitchen. And if you'd like a little help, I would love to be on your team. I'll help you make sure those skills are taught in a logical order. You don't have to figure out which tools or recipes are kid-friendly, so that's all done. I'll give you the language that speaks to kids' need for like fun and repetition, and you'll have videos that go slow enough so that the kids can learn step by step. I mean, I know the cooking shows are awesome, and they're really motivating kids to get in the kitchen, but they definitely move too fast for kids to like actually learn. So I am here for you. Look at that picture in the middle. Isn't that little cutie awesome? She's 2 years old and she's been using a butter knife to dutifully cut up all those peppers and all those cucumbers. So cute. So I'll teach you a little bit today, some really practical tips on how to get kids of all ages into the kitchen before the hour is up, plus like what skills are right for the ages. So I want you to stick around for that, but let's talk a little bit about how Kids Cook Real Food is making a difference for families. Right? We're not in the parenting game to get thanks. But when we do get a thank you, it's really something special. And that's what Anne experienced after doing the first cooking class. This is her family here, all in their aprons with dad walking in the back. I love that so much. Her 12-year-old boy gave her a huge hug, thanked her, and said it was super fun to learn to cook. And the 9-year-old boy said, I wish we could do cooking class every day. Oh, I do too, little buddy. Our class is for ages 2 to 12 and teens as well. Amy in California has a tween who is mad at mom because mom wouldn't buy processed food, but she liked that rice-a-roni. And after she made the homemade rice-a-roni in our class, the daughter said, oh my goodness, it tastes just like the real thing, even better. So total parenting score. And I love too that Amy's humble enough to admit that she learned new things too while working with her tween in the kitchen with her classes. So I know she would say to you, even if you don't know how to cook, even if you're not super comfortable in the kitchen, you can still use our classes to teach your kids to cook. They'll be a great fit for you. Now, what if your kids like mine could cook a meal every week? They're wearing their onion goggles, by the way, in case you're wondering what is going on in that picture, so they don't cry. What if they could just cook like a weekend breakfast or do some 15-minute prep on vegetables a couple nights a week? Would that be helpful to you? Would that make a difference in your family's life? I'd love to be on your team to help you do that. And I'll tell you just a little bit briefly about what we offer in the Kids Cook Real Food eCourse. We teach over 30 basic kitchen skills to kids at 3 different levels: preschoolers, early L, and upper L. All professionally filmed videos with kids in them, which motivates your kids. We have a whole recipe book where the recipes are written without abbreviations, kid-friendly language, and bigger font size. It's all healthy foods, no crescent rolls wrapped around hot dogs here, you guys. And the online dashboard is just easy to access from any mobile or desktop device. We also offer printable flashcards. Like I've shared with you some fun phrases that I teach adults, like MS-91 and 10, to help you remember. And we do the same thing in our course. We have 4 ways to hold the knife, 3 ways to hold the food, up and over soldier. We just have like all these fun phrases to help kids stay safe. So those are on printable flashcards. And then if you have multiple kids, and I saw many of you did when you introduced yourself, what's awesome about this is that the 3 levels actually intertwine so that what your kids are making at their own developmental level comes together in one meal or snack that the whole family can enjoy. The total value of all of that together is about $230, but don't worry, I don't charge that much because I want it to be really affordable for families. Plus, we have a lot of extra bonuses that come with our VIP membership, which is access that never expires. So that's really important. If you've got a 3-year-old, what you pay today will allow that 3-year-old to go through all 3 levels as he or she grows older. And you can download the videos so you don't have to worry about poor internet. We have a private Facebook group where parents, share pictures, brag on their kids. They ask me questions. We have a lot of really good conversation there about getting kids to eat well and to cook in the kitchen. My favorite class is in the VIP level. That's our hospitality class where we teach little ones how to carry plates, setting and washing the table. And we have an extra Instant Pot basic skills video along with quite a number of full-length ebooks from friends and colleagues of mine and worksheets and printables. This adds another $100 value onto what we've already seen. And so I've got a question for you. If I could help you feel confident about bringing your kids in the kitchen and provide that incredible quality time so it's not stressful for you, would that be worth $50? That's what a single level of the class will cost for like just your preschoolers or just your teenagers. But what if we could keep that going for all your kids as they grow older, continue building connection, instilling confidence, inspiring creativity in your kids for years? And if we threw in lifetime access, all those bonuses and extra resources, over $300 of extra resources, what would that be worth? It's over $400 value, way too much to be affordable for families. And I'm really committed to making this affordable so that we can make a difference for our kids and change the health of their generation. So today, it's only $149.95. And it gets even better because you've been listening to me for almost an hour now. And because I know you're such committed, focused, intentional parents from Positive Parenting, we're going to give you a $25 gift certificate, good for the next 5 days. So that'll knock that price down even more. And my hope is that your household has a success like Jenny, who said, this afternoon, I interrupted my 10-year-old during his play date to ask him to peel and cut a cucumber for tonight's salad. he was more than ready. The 8-year-old, who usually doesn't like salad, I know a lot of you are in that boat right now, said it's the best salad ever. Okay, so I hope that, like Jenny, you'll see Kids Cook Real Food as an investment into their future, but also great bonding time and confidence and creativity for them in the now. So you're warmly invited to join us. I can't wait to have this high caliber of parents in our Kids Cook Real Food eCourse, and we'll teach your kids these 30 basic skills. My commitment to you is that you can work at your own pace. The VIP level access never expires, so you use it for all your kids, and it's just very easy to check out: PayPal, credit card, bill me later if you need it. And of course, the $25 gift certificate lasts through the end of the day on Sunday. Now, we know you'll love the course. Our refund rate's actually really, really low, but I want you to be comfortable. And so we do have a 30-day happiness guarantee where you get to try everything out for up to 30 days. And for any reason whatsoever, we can give you your money back. We will have Q&A, and we do have more, more content. I got 4 minutes left till the top of the hour here. Q&A is always after the presentation. I'll stay as long as is needed. So I know, for example, Katie Pavlik emailed and said the biggest issue is that the kids don't have interest to cook. So here's how I want to give you, Katie, and all the other moms and dads and caregivers on right now, the courage to get your kids in the kitchen when you're in our class, okay? It's a very logically connected curriculum. It's gonna help you out. And here's how we split up the age levels in Kids Cook Real Food. So what I want you to do is listen for your kids' ages, and you can kind of figure out whether I get to work with you or not, what their next step should be in the kitchen, okay? So this is sort of the practical value. We're gonna get these kids in the kitchen right away. When we talk about our what we call our beginners, we're looking for positive experiences in the kitchen, okay? Positive parenting, right? Our beginners are so intrinsically motivated. Our ages 2 to 5, our preschoolers, they wanna help, right? They love helping. They think chores are fun. And so we want to say yes. We want to let them come in the kitchen. We want to keep it really positive and just have that like beautiful connection between parent and child. And we focus on small motor skills. So very practically in preschool, they're learning to hold their pencil, they're learning to cut. And in the kitchen, we use those same small motor muscles to do things like pouring, like measuring flat teaspoons, and stirring, like all these really, simple, but fun, for kids, fun activities with their hands. Now, I know that kids feel messy sometimes. So I want you to do a little activity. If you've got a 2 through 5-year-old, have them brush your teeth. And this will give you great empathy for why they're going to probably make a little mess as they're trying to measure a flat teaspoon of salt. Their small motor skills just aren't quite there yet. Don't worry, there's a few more tips to come at the end. Sorry about that, guys. In our intermediate level, which is what we call our early elementary, if you got an early elementary child, I want you to really raise the bar, okay? They're learning so much in school. They can do so much more in the kitchen. So we really get to instill confidence that they can do things on their own when they're about 6, 7, or 8 years old. The 3 skills that I want you to teach first with those levels, or most, is reading and following a recipe well. In Kids Cook Real Food, we teach how to organize the space and everything. We get sharp knives in their hands, because when you teach proper safety techniques, knives are not a danger any more than getting into a car is a danger. And those kids are also old enough to work at the stovetop. There's so many things, from flipping to browning beef to stirring pots, that kids can do at the stovetop that can really help the family and really instill their own confidence. Now, once kids have mastered those 3 skills, we call them our advanced kids. So this is gonna be like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and up. And now we can work really hard on the chef's knives. These knife skills really unlock the produce section. If we want our kids to eat healthy, they've got to be able to cut fruits and vegetables. They can start planning whole meals, and they're big enough and strong enough to start working with the oven. I don't recommend doing oven skills or oven safety until kids are about 8 or 9 years old. And even then, some of them are a little weak or a little nervous, and that's okay. So let's review a little bit. Once they're starting to get involved with food, all that time at the table will go even more smoothly, because hopefully you can start preparing the space by letting the kids get an appetite. You can lead with your ACE, those vegetables first, and you can keep a poker face by using all of those phrases we talked about and remembering the division of responsibility, the division of worry. So the last couple of phrases, these advanced strategies, we want to talk a little bit about mindfulness. This was like thinking about how food makes me feel was never something I was taught. It took years and elimination diets to realize that like oatmeal kind of makes my tummy hurt and white toast would make me foggy brained. But berries or cheese gives me a lot of energy and clarity. Wouldn't it be great if kids could get that from the start? So I want you to use phrases like listen to your body and how this food makes you feel. Eat for how you want to feel, right? If you want energy, what kind of foods are going to give you good, long-lasting energy, right? And then we got to talk about desserts because this is, or treats or whatever you call them in your household. This can be a big hot button issue. Like, how do I determine, Katie, when to serve desserts and how much and how many choices to allow the children to have? So first of all, we gradually release responsibility, right? So a 2-year-old doesn't get to make very many dessert choices. A 14-year-old should be by that time making his or her own dessert choices almost completely. And everything in between is gradually building up. Okay. In my house, I tell the kids to slow down more when they're eating sweets. And we call it savoring. Savor the fun foods because they're only fun in your mouth, right? We got to talk a little bit about nutrition, and kids can understand that these foods are not going to do anything healthy for your body, but they sure are fun, right? So we might as well slow down and savor them and make them count. A lot of the feeding experts that I've interviewed have taught me a ton about desserts over the years. And like, it kind of kills me when my kids eat 2 bites of dinner to even think about them having dessert, right? Like, I always kind of feel like eating dinner should be your ticket to get dessert. But I loved what one expert told me. She said, we don't want our dessert to be the celebration and dinner to be the expectation, right? If you have to eat your broccoli and you get to eat your dessert, we're building a habit that says, sweets are for celebrating. Why can't we celebrate with broccoli? So we really want to make sure that we treat dessert just like any other part of the meal. There's no ticket to earn dessert because then it's celebratory, it's lifted up, and kids are going to want it more. So as hard as it is for me, even if my kids don't eat a good dinner, they're still allowed to choose a dessert. Actually, in our family, we allow our kids to eat 1 dessert a day. They can choose whenever they want to eat it. When we first started that rule, my little one was 4 at the time, and he ate dessert at breakfast for 2 months. It was hilarious. But it also took like the celebratory nature off of that dessert. It wasn't a big deal anymore. Now, I do say, though, just because I can't handle kids eating like a huge bowl of ice cream if they've only had 2 bites of my soup, that your dessert can't be larger than your meal. Okay, so I feel like it should be, that's like my way of getting a little bit of balance there. I'd love to hear in the chat what toolbox term resonated with you. I mean, no one's going to use all 21, right? But some of them probably hit you better and like they fit your personality and they fit what your kids need. So I'd love for you to type in the chat, which one of these terms really fits the way that you teach. Ooh, I love a couple people like the little salt with the dinner. We got some very selective eaters there. And, we know teaching to kids to cook has lots of benefits for the kids, but it also helps the whole family, and it helps the whole family pretty much right away. We had an experience. You just saw a picture of my littlest guy, Gabe. When he was just 3 years old, he fell and hit his head. Didn't seem like a big deal at the time at all. But as I was getting into making dinner, I started to realize it was pretty serious. And he actually did have a concussion. And so I'm halfway through dinner, but I had to be on the phone with the doctor. And my husband is rubbing Gabe's back because he was vomiting. It was really a serious concussion. And, the emotions are high. We're kind of freaking out trying to get this all figured out. By the time we got him resting in his bed and could come down and see what had happened with dinner, I walked in and my 3 kids, Paul, Leah, and John, were sitting at the table. They'd finished off the soup. They'd cut up vegetables and made that awesome homemade ranch dip. And they were saying meal blessing and starting to eat dinner. And that would never be able to happen if I hadn't built the skills first, right? You can't wait till crisis hits and then hope that you can teach your kids to cook. So it's really important in my book to teach kids to cook now so that they can contribute to the family every day, but also when crisis hits. And I mean, my dream for you is that you can build connection, confidence, and creativity in your home, that your kids can be as proud as these little ones of making their pancakes and their stir fries and their muffins. And maybe like this mom, you might even get a chance to, do your Bible study or read a book or have a little time to do something else when your kids are cooking dinner. Now I would love to answer all your questions. I'm a little scared to see how many there have been because I've kind of seen them going by a little bit. And I know Sonia's been pulling them off. I got a ton of questions through email as well. And we'll do our best to answer all of them. Basically, like I'll stay as long as you guys need. And you're welcome to stay to for the Q&A. And I know there are a couple questions through email for sure that are even better suited for Amy. So Amy might come back on to answer some questions too. And then you're welcome, obviously, hey, Amy, how are you? So you're welcome to ask, any more questions. I hope I get to work with you at Kids Cook Real Food and teach your kids to cook, but happy to answer any questions you have about mealtime and the table.
Just while you're looking at questions, Katie, so again, for our 7-Step Parenting Success System members, you guys know we're just always talking about filling our kids' power buckets. Mm-hmm. And what Katie just described and all of these tips, which I took copious notes too, are so many ways to give them positive power, give them choice. When they feel control over their situation, they don't feel the need to fight you on it. And especially in this area of mealtime. Remember, I talked about how there are 3 areas in which young kids especially have legitimate power, right? Eating, bedtime, and pottying. In those 3 areas, they have 100% of the power and you have 0, right? And so if you have power struggles baked in, those are the areas in which they're going to fight back because they have all the control. And so what I love about Katie's approach is that it transitions the power to the kids in a positive way, in a way that develops their sense of capability and independence. And it fosters their love for cooking and for eating and for food and all of those things that we're trying to teach them without forcing them. So kind of my job is always teaching the parents. And what I love is Katie's job teaches the kids, like how to do all these things kind of step by step. So Katie, thank you for that. So I know there's a million questions. I'll let you answer those, and anything that you want me to jump in on, just let me know.
Sure. Sounds good. And I've seen just a few like business type questions. Yes, we did record. We will send you the recording. And yes, recording keeps rolling on the Q&A. So if you asked a very specific question that I answer through email, we'll do our best to email you even with the timestamp to listen right to it. And also, I guess I just forgot to say, like the $25 gift certificate is at kidscookrealfood.com/PPS for positive parenting solutions. Okay. Questions that came in live. We've got Marianne says, how many days per week do you recommend cooking with children? During the week, I'm usually cooking while my child does the homework. Yeah, it's so hard. Like, I think we don't have time was the second most chosen answer for why people aren't getting their kids in the kitchen on this call. And so I don't think that there's any hard and fast rule, Marianne, as far as cooking with the kids. But I do know it's really, really good to have consistent practice, right? So once a skill is taught, we want to give those children opportunities to practice. So a lot of times cooking with kids doesn't mean the entire hour or hour and a half of meal prep. It might just be 5 to 10 minutes to cut up a cucumber, or 5 to 10 minutes for them to prepare a snack that's just, stirred together. I talk a lot about that ranch dip because that's something that my kids make all the time along with guacamole. So it's just little opportunities to get that practice. And I would say at least once a week, try to have a special time where the children can get in the kitchen. What else did I see there? Let's see. My kids love veggies but hate protein. Should I lead with protein? Possibly. Sure. I mean, that makes sense, right? When the appetite is the most built up, if protein is what you feel that they need more of, definitely leading with protein. Doesn't have to be vegetables. Those just tend to be like the least liked of all the foods. Gloria says, my 12-year-old daughter loved making us crepes, but is having egg allergies. So now she lost interest making breakfast. Oh, that's so sad because she loves eggs and hates the alternative. Yes, I feel this as well because my daughter loves dairy and a year and a half ago discovered she has a dairy sensitivity. So it did sort of take some of the joy out of cooking for her. She's definitely rediscovered it back by using dairy alternatives. And so I would hope, Gloria, that you can just find like not egg alternatives, but just like other ideas to make for breakfast. I know for my daughter, she's been Googling her own recipes and that like she's constantly trying new ones and that's just fitting her personality, but it's also for sure that positive power bucket of like, she's making the choices. So I would hope if you could sit down with your daughter and look up some really fun breakfast recipes, or make it not about breakfast. You know, there's lots of egg-free snacks, especially, and snack time is a great time to get kids involved because usually they can make it ahead of time. So it doesn't matter how the schedule feels. You know, you don't have to be like, oh no, the kids are making breakfast, it's going to be a late breakfast. You can just work at the snack time at any time. Ooh, someone wants to see the curriculum map slide. I think I can do that. I will find it in just a second, Helen. Thanks. Did you have anything to add on that one, Amy? Oh,
Sorry, I muted myself. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
No, I think you covered it perfectly. Nothing to add there.
Okay, from Maggie, can half-eaten meals be left for later to finish instead of snacks or as snacks? And I almost feel like I missed a slide or something, because usually I talk about, I don't know where this one went. Usually I talk about that for me, like, because I'm a big proponent of stewardship, once the children are starting to serve themselves, which is that gradual release of responsibility, you know, my 2-year-olds don't serve themselves. My 12-year-olds do. Somewhere in between, when they're mature enough and they're making good choices, they get to serve themselves. I always tell my kids, if you serve yourself, you need to finish it. Not necessarily at that meal, because we don't want to teach them to eat beyond satiety and get too full. But that's when, for sure, I put stuff away and bring that out at the next snack if they've served themselves. Otherwise, it's really a case-by-case basis. I think if you've served them, because you want to avoid those power struggles. Yeah, so what we don't want is that meal to come back 5 times, 10 times, you know, and the kid is doing the staring, like, finish, you know, having to finish the plate. So using that one taste rule can be really helpful. Then there's not as much left over. From Carrie, my husband and I love spicy foods, ethnic foods, trying new foods. My kids don't like any of those. If we raise our expectations so that we want them to eat these foods, do we offer additional simple food, or just serve the main meal as we want them to eat it? That's a great question. And it's really, really common that kids, I know there's some other ones on this list where kids like the bland foods, right? They don't like any spices, and that can be frustrating for parents, especially parents with adventurous palates. But we've got to respect that our kids have hundreds of thousands of more taste buds than we do. So what feels spicy to us can feel like way up here to them, and what feels bland to us is actually just perfect for them. So I would say it's not about short order cooking, but sometimes it's about deconstructing the meal, where instead of mixing everything together. So this is going to be the same answer for a lot of those parents who asked me about, my kid doesn't like mixed up foods, soup, casseroles, hot dish, and stuff like that. What do I do? Well, that can just be their eating style, their eating preference. And so if deconstructing those meals and having a little pile of chicken and a little pile of broccoli and a little pile of whatever, and their dip where they can control it, if that's what works for them, then I would definitely say work within the boundaries of the way the child can appreciate food. And, you know, Frank's hot sauce at the table can kind of make everything a little spicier. So I don't think it's short order cooking to have sort of like spicier and less spicy, because as long as you're having all the same components, if that makes sense. And kids will naturally begin to try to eat what you're eating as they get older too. Like I said, Gabe says, I'm daddy's spicy boy. He'll put like 1 drop of hot sauce in just to be cool and be grown up like daddy. It's cute. Sabine has a question that I think a lot of families do too. What if my son doesn't like anything on the table? Should I have at least one thing he likes? And yes, I do think so. I think especially if you're trying to transition your child away from being that, you know, word we're not going to say, the picky eater. Yes. You know, we always have multiple options on the table at our house. There's some raw veggies, there's a dip, there's a main course, there might be a side vegetable, there may or may not be a side bread, there might be 3 side vegetables sometimes. But I do think that we need to give kids something comfortable to hang on to. And that's where we talk about portion control, right? They shouldn't have the massive pile of their comfort food and like nothing else. It's about appropriate portions and those first taste bites. And that'll give that's the power and control bucket, isn't it, Amy?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. How do you approach cooking in the kitchen with kids with allergies? This is from Kim. Do your classes discuss allergies? or provide recipes in advance to find alternatives. So at Kids Cook Real Food, kids with allergies was a major driving factor for me in how I set up the course, because I know that more and more kids these days are dealing with allergies, sensitivities, special diets. And in fact, we know that a third of our families have kids with allergies, I think because they know that their kids need to learn to cook more than anybody. It's not safe for other people to cook for those kids. So all of our recipes are very allergy friendly, and we actually offer adaptations in the course. So when you're a member, you get access to everything right away. So there's no, like, you don't have to worry about, oh, do I get the recipes in advance? Yeah, you have like everything all at once. And the recipes, I mean, we most of the time stay away from the big things like dairy and gluten. It's just in there a few times. And then we have alternate recipes or alternate skills. Our course focuses on teaching the skills, not the recipes. So if we're working on a skill of rolling out dough, and we might be, we're using whole wheat tortillas, we've got another, gluten-free recipe and grain-free recipes that you practice the same skill of rolling out dough. So when we focus on the skills, not the recipes, that makes it very allergy friendly for sure. Claudia says, do you serve the next course even if the kids decide not to try the veggies or soup? So that's awesome. We're talking about, the lead with your ACE when you put the veggies out first. And ideally, we're going to get at least the first taste bite in. And then, yes, absolutely, the rest of the meal comes out. So there's never any clean your plate club, never any requirement of like earning the next course. It's just about giving that opportunity and giving that offering when they have that appetite.
Yeah, and I love the smell, lick, taste approach. It's so empowering for kids. There's no pressure. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe it was Russ, I forget who asked in the chat, my kid will eat anything at their friend's house. Or when kids were in school, would often hear, at school, they'll eat anything during snack time. And that's because there's no pressure from the parent, right? But they know that we're emotionally invested in what they eat and how much they eat. And so they are naturally putting up the barriers when we want them to eat something. So this just takes that smell, lick, taste option, just takes all the pressure out of it. Mm-hmm. And again, it's filling up that exposure bucket that you talk about.
Absolutely. And a lot of parents talk about like the positive peer pressure coming out of the screen when they're using our classes. So our class 1 beginners learn how to spread. So one of the things they do is spread nut butter, cream cheese on celery for ants on a log. And I have so many parents say, oh my goodness, Katie, if I knew all it took was watching your kids eat celery on video and having them cut it themselves, like I would have done this years ago, because my kids never would eat celery until today, which is awesome. So there's, that exposure and that being involved with food really gets kids excited about eating. It doesn't work every time. I know some parents already have emailed and commented like, oh, my kids are cooking, but they still won't eat it. Well, it's not magic. It still takes time to fill that exposure bucket, and you don't know what their number is.
They're not eating it yet. Right? It's that growth mindset that Katie talked about. And, we talk about in our program as well. They're not picky eaters. We're not defining them as that thing. They're just still learning what they like. Their taste buds are still growing, like all those things that says they may not like it now, but down the road with more and more exposure, they might.
Yes, absolutely. Melissa just said, can SLT, smell it, lick it, taste it, take the place of the taster bite? Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. That's what you do if your kids are really, really stubborn and confrontational about that taster bite. You go, well, it's okay to experience your food. We're still learning. Why don't you smell it, lick it, or taste it? And so it's like, you're not giving up, but you're also not engaging in that power struggle.
So one thing I just want to mention, Katie, really quickly. So those of you who are in our 7-step parenting success system, we talk about the power of mind, body, and soul time, right? That one-on-one time that we spend with our kids. This is the perfect activity for that. Right? If you just do one of Katie's lessons with one of your kids, that's such a fun way to engage with them. I also talk about one of the ways to minimize sibling rivalry is controlling the environment during the difficult times of the day. And so for so many families, one of the difficult times of the day is right when mom or dad are trying to cook dinner and the kids start acting up and then they're fighting and all of that. So have a rotating schedule where one of them is in the kitchen with you, or two of them, where you have the kitchen helper for the day, and they're doing all of the different skills that they've learned in Katie's class, whether it's chopping things or whatever it happens to be, tearing up lettuce for a salad. Like, that's super empowering for a little kid. So control the environment by separating them during the difficult times of the day. So one or two of them can be the kitchen helper with you, and then you just rotate that schedule through the week.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Jackie or JC just asked, I don't understand the single level $49.95. So Kids Cook Real Food is split up into those 3 levels: preschool or beginners, early L intermediate, and upper L advanced. So if you have a child who kind of just fits perfectly in one of those, you can just buy a single level for 12 months for $49.95. VIP is by far the most popular though, because most families need all the levels, and they really like that access that doesn't expire. Kind of takes the pressure off you to need to get it done too quickly.
So lifetime access has, or VIP has lifetime access for all the materials.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yep.
And I somebody asked if these sessions were pre-recorded versus live. You have to show up at a certain time, and they're all pre-recorded, right?
Yes. Yep. They're all pre-recorded. You get access to everything right away. And that's good, because kids don't want to watch like real-time cooking. That takes a really long time. So they're edited quickly. So none of the videos are over 20 minutes. And I know someone had asked about the curriculum map. I just realized, rather than to share the screen of just one page of that, there's a link for the curriculum map that you can go to if you want to look at each of the skills that we teach in the different levels, and kind of the recipes we use to teach those. Juana has a question that I know a lot of parents feel this way too. My son gets hangry when he's hungry. How do you manage that? He could eat every hour. MS-91 and done's not going to work. And I think this is about figuring out the satiating snack, right? So when we teach kids about a good snack, we talk about fat, protein, and fiber are the 3 components that are really going to stick to your ribs and satiate for a long time. So perhaps, Juana, your son needs a larger snack and really focus on getting those healthy fats, high protein, and high fiber. So like a piece of fruit probably isn't going to cut it. Get some nut butter involved, or, some coconut oil fudge, or something that will really last a long time. We don't want to let our kids' blood sugar be crashing. I think, goodness, one of my writers just wrote a cool article on kitchen stewardship about blood sugar and kids. And you could probably look that up and figure it out, because that's why he's getting hangry, because his blood sugar is crashing and he doesn't feel well. So he starts to act not well, right? And so potentially he might need some veggies and dip in the middle, in between those snacks, if it has to happen. And like I said, I don't call veggies earlier than dinner. I might serve those veggies half an hour before dinner. If there's been too long of a gap, that's not an extra snack. It's just an appetizer. It's just starting dinner early, right? So you don't have to break the rule. And hopefully that answered Cleach's question too, about building snacks in a specific way.
Somebody asked if the classes were for kids or for parents, Katie.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're for kids, although I don't usually recommend sending kids off into the kitchen with knives and fire without a parent, right? So therefore, that we teach the kids, we speak, to the kids, and it's all kind of kid-friendly language and kid-friendly activities. So it's to teach the kids to cook. Parents tend to learn by proxy. And most of the time, you should be there for the lessons, and then you gradually shift to independence for the kids.
There was a question about snacks at bedtime, Katie. So I'm going to let you answer that first, and then I was going to pipe in with kind of what we typically recommend as well.
Sure thing. And I know I saw that one come in by email too. I just don't remember the name. Those bedtime snacks, first follow the MS-91 and done rule. So it depends when your dinner ends and when your bedtime is. If you've got a 90-minute gap, nothing wrong with a bedtime snack. But if you don't, that bedtime snack is going to train your children that dinner is optional, because they know the snack is coming and can save them if they're hungry. I would say, if you do have a bedtime snack habit, try to stick to that high fat, high protein. I know, and I don't see the name right now, but I remember hearing a mom in the email say their 11-year-old was getting up in the night hungry. I usually hear that with like the 18-month, 2-3-year-olds. Whatever the age, if the child's getting up in the night hungry, you've got to get that high fat, high protein. So there's like really good like coconut oil fudges or nuts, just anything, cheese, anything that's high fat, high protein, that takes longer to digest. So it's going to keep them full till breakfast. Yeah.
And I would just piggyback on that by saying, again, for younger kids, after dinner, there's probably not another 90 minutes before they're going to bed and starting the bedtime routine. So you probably don't need it. But the key thing is, if you're going to have a snack, that's part of your routine every day. It's not a snack on demand. So we wouldn't want the snack to be, as part of delaying the bedtime routine. Well, I'm hungry, I'm starving. We don't want to give into demands for snacks. It's just that if it's part of your regular routine and it meets the 90-minute rule, then fine, we do that. And as Katie says, it's a healthy snack. It's not a bag of goldfish that's going to be, super exciting for kids.
Yes. Yeah. You don't want it to be an incentive.
Yes.
Yes, for a snack. I think I see too many pictures of like kids with Cheerios on the high chair tray late at night. That's the opposite of like the kind of snack that you want to serve.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't cross them out. Let's see. Sarah says she'd like to know how to handle the youngest changing likes and dislikes. They change from week to week. You're not alone, Sarah. That was already on my list of most often asked questions. And how to make sure my oldest, who's a very good eater, learns to know when she has had enough. So hopefully, Sarah, when I talked about mindfulness, that's how you teach the kids to know when they've had enough. I've got boys who love to eat. Oh my goodness. And I will have to say, hey guys, like, slow down. I want you to only eat when you're hungry. I want you to sit down for a couple minutes and use your mouth for talking a little bit. And then ask your body if you're actually hungry or if you just really, really like nacho night, because they're going for fifths. And, so, just really talking about listening to your body and how the food makes you feel is the answer to that one. And then, yes, so many kids change likes and dislikes. And I know a lot of parents also said, man, sometimes my kids will eat like they want carbs, and then they want protein. So what's fascinating about especially little kids is they generally, if they're served all healthy foods, research shows that they balance themselves out over the course of a week. So where you're seeing a really unbalanced meal, likely the child will balance themselves out over the week. Again, if healthy food is served, if they've got options of, Twinkies and potato chips, well, that's off the table. The research doesn't work anymore. But yeah, changing likes and dislikes, you just kind of let them have preferences. I have preferences. Amy has preferences. And it's going to happen. And they'll cycle through different phases, and you just kind of like let it happen and continue to serve what you know to be as healthy.
Well, I think that's the exciting thing about what we're talking about here is teaching them the skills and getting them involved in the kitchen. So if they're on a protein stage, let's work with some recipes and be making protein snacks or meals. Or if they're in a healthy carb stage, let's really foster that by finding recipes that they find interesting, get them involved in the shopping, the preparing, and creating the snack. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, definitely. I just saw Ade says, wait, we should not give our children snacks. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that you need 90 minutes between a meal and a snack. And if there's not 90 minutes before bedtime, you should not have a bedtime snack.
The other quick little thing is, guys, just remember that dinner, people get so concerned because their kids are not hungry for dinner. That's okay. A lot of kids, by the end of the day, they're done. So we have to make sure that the majority of the nutrition is not in the dinner meal, right? They need to be getting healthy meals and snacks throughout the day. So even if they didn't eat anything for dinner, they would still have the nutrition that they need throughout the day. Do you agree with that, Katie?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And in fact, I have a great interview with Dr. Elisa Song, a holistic MD, on what kids should eat. And she sort of addresses that, like the importance of that healthy breakfast and kind of front loading the day, because yeah, kids will have favorite meals. Some kids are real light eaters at breakfast. Some are real light eaters at dinner. And we got to work with the way our kids have been built and just make sure that we're serving that healthy food. Laura says, my 5-year-old won't eat anything mixed together. Should I keep humoring her? And we talked a little bit about that with the food combining. It's really okay to deconstruct those meals. And eventually the kids will probably start to mix on their own a little bit.
Katie, there's a couple questions. Oh, I'm sorry, hon.
Oh, that's right. I was moving on.
Okay, there are a couple questions about the answers to the mindfulness section. So let me just go through that. Number 17 is, and tell me if I get this right, Katie, listen to your body.
Yes.
Number 18 is eat for how you want to feel. This is such an awesome take time for training opportunity, guys. Talking about how different foods make your body feel and really helping them be attuned to that. And then number 19, I believe, is if you serve yourself, you finish it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
And
Can you
that's
just
the one I
expand
think
on that one more minute?
What's that?
Can you expand on that point one more minute? If you serve yourself, you finish it.
Yep, that's the one where I think I dropped the slide on that one somehow. I don't know where it went, but and that's again coming from my perspective as just wanting to promote good stewardship.
Oh, right.
But I think when kids serve themselves, that's the only time that I would ever require that they finish, but not at that meal necessarily. We don't want them to eat beyond satisfaction and into fullness, but that's when I'm definitely going to have them package that up for their next eating opportunity. The unfair advantage bit research show people learn best by doing and by teaching, I believe is that one.
If you have multiple kids, this is also a neat opportunity. Once you teach the older ones some of those kitchen skills, use your olders to teach your youngers, kind of like a Montessori environment where the olders teach the youngers. Like you could totally do that with the skills that Katie is teaching in her program. Don't you think, Katie?
Oh, absolutely. And my kids have done the same. I mean, Leah's now 12 and she was just saying the other day, Mom, you never taught me to cut an onion. I just watched Paul. I was like, oh, I should teach you a couple of little strategies, because she's advanced beyond when we, officially did the lessons. But same thing, absolutely. I'll have Paul, who's now 15, will work with the 5-year-old to make homemade taco seasoning and just kind of, so he's like the guide. And that Gabe, the 5-year-old, is practicing his measuring skills and his mixing skills and stuff like that. So great ways to get kids involved together. Maggie says, still wondering recommended snack size. Does it depend on the child's appetite? It does. It depends on the child's age and appetite. So you want to hit that sweet spot where a snack is cutting their hunger, but not filling them up.
And remember, guys, Katie talked about the division of responsibility, right? As a parent, your job is to decide what we're going to eat, when we're going to eat, where we're going to eat, and create a pleasant mealtime environment. Your kid's responsibility is to eat that or not. Well, if you haven't created that opportunity for hunger, they're not going to eat it and they're going to be pickier and fuss about everything. That's why that 90-minute rule is so important. So you're at least creating that opportunity for them to be hungry and actually sit down and eat.
Yes, exactly. Well said. Aurelia says, when it comes to finish first before having seconds, what if they won't eat the crust, but everything else? Can they have another slice of pizza? Yeah, I mean, we don't want to get too much into the nitty gritty, right? So it's, you make a good effort on finishing that. And Rebecca says, very similar. What about cutting off crusts, peeling apples? They won't eat it if it's cut or trimmed. I want to give it to them whole. I'm not sure if I understand all of that, but again, we talk about, kids are little human beings and they have preferences. And sometimes those apple peels or those crusts are they don't feel right in their mouth. And so that's okay. That's okay. If you really want them, if you're thinking nutritionally and you want them to get that fiber from the apple peels, make apple sauce with the whole peel and blend it up. And then it just disappears in there. So there's always many, many options to get the proper nutrients. And so, yeah, no, not a problem at all to cut those apples. Or peel.
Katie, there's a question about the kids course, real food course methodology. There was a note on the note-taking guide for that.
Oh.
When you say the methodology, what does that mean exactly? There's 3 C's?
The 3 C's, yep. I feel like I've changed this presentation so much and sometimes we forget to edit the worksheet when I take out a slide. That's what at Kitchen Stewardship, we talk about building connection, confidence, and creativity. So I said it many times, probably just didn't have the words properly on a slide, but yeah, connection, confidence, and creativity are these amazing benefits we find when we teach kids to cook. What else we got? Derek asks, how do you handle dessert? Do you get it if you didn't eat dinner? We definitely covered that in the presentation, so you can watch the recording for that one. Basically, we don't want to make dessert this celebration, this prize that everyone gets at the end. So you do have to kind of let them have dessert, even if they didn't eat dinner. Let's see. Femina has a question about spicy food, but we already answered that with someone else. See, I love there's so many questions are very similar. We have similar experiences as parents. Kelly, when the family eats together, does everyone have to eat veggies first? I'm guessing yes, but double checking. Here's the thing. serving your veggies first is sort of a rehabilitation strategy if you've got kids who won't eat vegetables at all. Okay, I don't serve vegetables first anymore because my kids are the ones who are going back at the end of the meal and nibbling on the carrots and the cucumbers until they're gone. Like just the other night, I said to my son, John, do you need thirds of salad? Like, are you still hungry? And I'm asking him, are you still hungry about salad? And I'm like, that doesn't even sound right. But I was still trying to teach him to listen to his body. I was like, I think that's thirds or fourths on salad. So for my family, no, we just serve it all at once because we don't have any veggie aversions. But if you've got anyone you're trying to rehabilitate and pump up the veggies, I would say yes, have the whole family be the example and do it all together. Being optimistic that school will resume. How do you feed kids who start school at 8 and don't eat lunch until 12? Yeah, school, it's tricky when it's like a blessing and a curse, right? When we're all at home and have all the time in the world, sometimes that means kids are wandering in and accessing the snack cupboard far too often, but it also means you can set your schedule. Boy, I am shocked that a school would not have a snack between 8 and 12. They need a really good power-packed breakfast with fat, protein, and fiber. This course with the kids. Okay, oh, the kids are 10 and 12. Yeah, the older they get, the fewer snacks they get sometimes.
Yeah, I would say, see if they can take something in their backpack or something, a protein bar or something to get them through the morning.
Exactly. Yeah, especially if your kids are like really having blood sugar issues and getting hangry, you gotta just talk to the teacher and be like, listen, like we need to nourish our kids here. Elizabeth asked, do I let kids choose their own snack and portion amount? And this totally depends on the age. So, and the age and their personality and their maturity. So at age 2, I'm definitely setting portion amounts. But for my kids, by about age 5 or 6, they're already setting their own portions, but only because like we've set that habit, right? And we have that routine. And so I have my youngest is 5 right now. And a lot of times maybe we're having cheese and crackers. And I'll say, you can have 4, 5, or 6 crackers. And that gives him
the choice, 4, 5,
really,
or 6.
Really easy choices. I don't care if he has 4, 5, or 6. I'm not going to say you may have 5 to 20 because 20 is too many, right? But that gives him lots of choice, and it's training him to set his own serving sizes. So my kids are pretty good now at setting their own serving sizes because of training like that. Talking about short order cooking and making multiple meals, do you suggest a slow transition or just go for it all in if you're trying to wean off from short order cooking? I know many of you are. I would suggest whatever your brain can handle, right? It's got to be something that's doable and sustainable for you. So if going all in feels like it's going to be total failure for you, then shift slowly. Sometimes having like a fun special dinner. So I know someone had asked about table manners in email. And I would say maybe have a fancy dinner where everyone dresses up and you light candles and you like teach table manners and do it all proper, but it's like an event and it's fun. You can do something like that for like the kickoff of the short order cook, or the kickoff of the no short order cooking, I guess, and just explain to your kids like, this is how it's going to be. We can work together. I would love to hear your feedback on how you like to serve food and maybe give them those options of deconstructed meals over short order cooking.
Yeah, I would just agree with that too. And again, we always use the term, you're really growing up and becoming so independent in so many ways. And this is one of those ways where you can be even more independent. And again, getting them involved in the whole process. The other thing is when you're serving the meal, just make sure that you serve something that they do like, right? Something healthy that they do like. So that, even if they don't like 4 of the 5 things, they have corn or whatever it is. And again, we can't depend on dinner to be your total nutrition, right? So they've had healthy meals and snacks throughout the day. So even if they didn't eat anything at dinner, they would still survive.
They would still survive. That is important. I don't have a name, but someone asked about measurements in the Kids Cook Real Food eCourse. They're actually both in US and metric. And we're all closed captioned and serving everybody.
So you do have closed captioning. Wonderful.
Do you have any kid meal plans that help parents learn how to give good options throughout the day and balance it all? That's a great idea. I should publish more meal plans. I don't. For me, no, I don't actually publish a lot of meal plans because that's my personality. I don't like using other people's meal plans. So I don't often share my own. That'd be a good idea though.
Okay, there's a whole bunch of questions about the unfair advantage. So let's take a stab at this together because I don't think I got it all right. I think the first one was research shows people learn best by doing, or better yet, by teaching. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. The next one, I didn't get at all. When kids are blank with blank, they're more likely to blank. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, I think it's when kids interact with food, they're more likely to eat and enjoy it.
That makes perfect sense. The next one is to fill the exposure bucket. Remember, and it's not just eating it, it's shopping for it, cutting it up, touching it, serving it. All those things are exposures and they all count to getting them more likely to try it in the future. The next one is the good news. Research shows that any exposure, I guess, with food counts.
Yep. And
kids may need to try something how many times before they eat it or like it?
Oh, I forgot to say that line. It's kind of a joke, like somewhere between 2 and 1 million.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 2 and 1 million. Yeah, I need to get into that worksheet and edit it based on what I've been saying recently. Tina asked a good question. Is the kids cooking class good for kids with disabilities? And actually it has surprised me how well it works for kids with disabilities. I didn't intend it that way. I just based it on educational philosophies that are good for all kids. But we find a lot of parents reporting that kids on the spectrum and with Down syndrome really appreciate the repetitive nature of the phrases and the ability to rewatch the videos, right? That really speaks to their need for sort of that repetition. And even kids with physical disabilities, we have an awesome little boy with cerebral palsy who has no use of his left arm. And his mom is still adapting cutting boards to hold the food for him. I mean, she is just inspiring. So yes, absolutely. We're also in use with the Utah School for the Deaf and Blind. So even the kids who can't see are learning from our videos. Awesome. It's just amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing to me.
The cool thing is Katie, before she did this, was a 3rd grade teacher. So, everything is designed for your kids to be successful, for them to enjoy it, to be able to recall it, internalize it, and enjoy the process. So it's like, you don't have to figure it out. All the work is done for you.
Yes. That's my job, is to do your thinking, because your brains are full enough as parents. You're working hard enough. Brian has a 4-year-old who won't eat any proteins besides hot dogs or chicken nuggets, and everything else is a battle. Oh, even peanut butter needs to be a 10-90 ratio with jelly. That's funny. Oh, the son will choose to go to bed hungry rather than eat any kind of meat with dinner. Man, it's so tricky when kids have those like big restriction, like they self-set restrictions. Boy, I would use what I call a bridging system for something like chicken nuggets. Start with the chicken nuggets they know and figure out how many little steps you can make on the yellow brick road to other forms of chicken, right? So maybe it's, if some kids are so brand specific, maybe it's just trying another brand one day, and then it's homemade chicken nuggets, and then it's, and they help make it. And then you can move on to perhaps grilled chicken. So it can be a long process, but that's what I would try first for that little one, Brian.
I think the other thing to also sort of assess for your family is some of this is about food sensitivity and a lack of courage, right, in trying new things. And that's what Katie's program is totally going to help with. And then the other thing is just assessing the power struggles in general. So if the kid would rather go to bed hungry, that says to me, we've got some baked in power struggles there. And again, mealtime is just one of the classic areas for power struggles. So in addition to all the things you're going to be doing in Katie's program, also guys who are in our program, make sure that you maybe do a refresh on steps 3 and 4, which is where all those strategies are for minimizing power struggles throughout your day. Because if you minimize power struggles throughout your day, you're also going to help minimize them at mealtime as well.
That's awesome. That's good. I know usually when kids have those kind of self-restricted food groups, I do talk about food sensitivities. It's just not as common with the protein one. And in fact, a lot of parents will say, oh, my child only wants to eat pancakes and pretzels and bread products, or only wants to eat milk and cheese and yogurt. And what's really crazy is that sometimes a food craving a food is actually a sign of being sensitive to that food. It's like our body is kind of rebelling and craving what hurts us the most. So anytime you've got a kid who seems to be like very, very drawn to one food group or very, very turned away from one food group, it's totally worth trying an elimination diet and looking for food sensitivities. Not as much the blood test for a true allergy, but if something's making them hurt, it can totally transform behavior, can totally transform appetite if you can find and discover and root out a food sensitivity. Tricky. It's hard to do, but I mean, you all are positive parenting followers. You're intentional parents. You know what you're doing here. Aid says, my son is 10 and reluctant to eat new foods. Is he too old to change his eating habits? Is it too late? But also he's got like some fear because of a wheat and nut allergy. It's very tricky. And we had a couple other parents ask about those allergies and that fear and that anxiety of trying new things. And I totally get that. I think we need to build trust, right, between the parents and the children, that we won't feed you something that will hurt you. And just a lot of conversation, I think, about trying new foods and it, what's the worst that can happen? Well, it tastes bad and you spit it out. No big deal. It's not going to make you sick. I definitely 10 is not too old. My husband started liking sweet potatoes at age 35. So it's literally never too late to start those new habits. And like we said, getting the kids involved with the food where there's not the pressure to eat it and not the anxiety about food passing their lips is incredibly helpful. Kelly wants breakfast ideas. They won't eat anything other than chocolate spread on bread. We don't actually eat a lot of bread here at the Kimball house. We're kind of gluten light. So we do quite a bit of oatmeal in different ways, and eggs. The adults, we put a ton of veggies in our eggs. I'm still working on my kids with veggies at breakfast. But yeah, breakfast is a tough one just because you're hungry and you don't want to make too much. But I would encourage you, Kelly, to try like make ahead, maybe breakfast bars or muffins or something that can be ready to go. My little boys have been making during quarantine, like every couple of weeks, a big quadruple batch of homemade granola. And, so they get to choose how much cinnamon goes in and the wonderful smells of that. And then they're always super excited. And when they go to bed, they always say, what's for breakfast? Because they're planners, both my boys. They want to know. And when I say, I think it's homemade granola day tomorrow, they're like, yay. I'm like, no, calm down. It's time to go to sleep. Do I ever let kids pick their snacks? I do. In fact, right now, again, in the summer, we've got a list. We have quite a big list of snack ideas for them. And each of my 3 big kids, they're ages 8, 12, and 15. They are household managers on different days. And so it's up to the household manager to serve the snack at the appropriate time, to choose the snack, and to clean up.
I love that.
And that was out of desperation because we still have to get some work done. Both my husband and I are working at home. We always worked at home. That's not new in pandemic times. And we were like, you guys got to deal with yourselves.
There was a question from Beth, which we kind of talked about a little earlier about my kid only wants to eat mac and cheese, eats a variety of foods at daycare, but won't at home. So again, that is more often than not a power struggle. And they know that you're so invested in what they eat and there's all that pressure. So he's refusing to eat at home. I would highly recommend getting him involved in Katie's program where he is, helping with the meals and learning how to do that preparation. It will make such a difference in their willingness to try new things. But again, we also have the exposure bucket, right? Taste, smell, lick. So did I get that right?
Yep. Smell it, lick it, taste it. A little
lick it, taste it. Yeah. So yeah, just even that helps. But again, do a gut check on how invested you are and how you demonstrate that to your kids. Because if you're too invested, I promise you, they are going to put up the barriers and refuse.
Mm-hmm. And also, if they're eating at daycare, that's probably a good sign that daycare has set some habits and routines and that they're being consistent there. So you can try to emulate what they're doing and take that emotion out of it. So many good questions coming in. So is it the kid's choice how much they eat or put on the plate? And again, it depends on their age and their maturity. If a child is struggling with eating a good balance, I'm going to decide what's on their plate. They decide how much they eat, right? Division of responsibility. The adult's job is what, when, and where. The child's job is how much and whether. And if they don't eat, it's okay. They won't die. We gotta take our emotion out of it. And I know some parents will say, literally, like Katie, they literally won't eat for days. And that's where we say that's another problem. That's not just a picky eater, right? That's a problem feeder. And we have all sorts of awesome expert interviews at Kids Cook Real Food too, that can help you sort of identify maybe what's going on and more advanced strategies.
Katie, do you ever put a timer, like a time frame on how long we're going to sit at the table?
I have kids who are really slow, and there's a question about that too. You must have seen it come in. Like, my kids take forever to eat dinner. How can I get them to speed up? And for me, my answer on that is like, if they're eating, and if you're having amazing conversation as families, and they're not just, twiddling, then I think long dinners are wonderful. It's so much better for digestion to chew thoroughly and to take time and to sit and get in that rest and digest state. So I never want to like rush children. They're rushed enough at school and daycare, in my opinion. Now, I just saw a question buzz by that said my child will hold that bite in their mouth for like an hour. And that's probably more of a sensory thing. We're probably not talking about food or behavior or discipline there. That there's something sensory going on. They might even have trouble swallowing, and it's likely more of a medical physiological thing to really look into, and not just ignore and not just try to discipline your way out of that. It's not a discipline issue.
Janet asked, my daughter will only talk and not eat at dinner. If kids are hungry, they will eat in most cases. Would you agree with that, Katie?
I would. Yeah, I'm the talker too. Everyone's done and I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot to eat my meal. But as the parent, you can sit there with the child and say, hey, I've got a story for you. Why don't you eat while I tell this story? Awesome. And then their mouth can do that. Juliet, I got to grab your question. How about if they're totally messing around at the table? Because I'm going to put this in the bucket with the many, many, many parents who emailed about their children leaving the table. I think it's really the same issue. Number one, like Amy said, if they're hungry, they will eat. So prepare the space, let them build that appetite. And again, messing around, totally a discipline issue, not medical. And it's about setting those expectations. It doesn't necessarily mean, this is going to sound weird, but I don't think you have to have the kids bums in chairs necessarily. Partly because, and this was like mind blowing when I learned this from Dr. Kay Toomey, the feeding expert, is that when your feet are not planted physically and they're swinging a little bit, part of your brain is focusing on the fact that you might fall off your chair. So look at your children. Do their feet have somewhere to go on their chairs? Probably not, because they're adult sized chairs and you're putting a little body into them. And that's why, like, I've got my 8-year-old and I have crazy pictures of him where he's got one foot on the floor and one foot's kind of tucked under him on the chair, and he's like everywhere. And that's like literally he's trying not to fall. And when your brain is a little bit occupied by subconsciously thinking you might fall, you can't focus on eating. Isn't that wild? So it would be better to let your kids stand if they will eat than to insist that they sit. That could be one like root cause of some of the misbehavior. Also, they might not be hungry. It might just be like, okay, dinner's done. We're going to clear the table and your next eating opportunity will be breakfast or whenever it is. So that can really help. And yeah, there are special chairs. I see Kelly is saying there are some cool special chairs that can adjust with your kid's size to give their feet somewhere to go, which is awesome. And then with the kids leaving the table, again, it could be a food thing, could be an appetite thing. It could just be a routine and discipline thing. But I also love that idea of like, if the child has the agency and the choice to move the food away from them, they might not have to move their bodies away from the table. So if they're having some choice, and also when they're involved with the cooking, it opens a loop in their mind. And humans don't like open loops. We like to finish what we start, which is one of the many scientific reasons why kids cooking helps them to eat better, because they want to see it through. They want to finish what they started. So that can be really impactful too if you're having sort of the jumping beans at the table. Anything to add on that one, Amy, since there's sort of a...
Yes. And so much of that is also, I think, setting the environment, right? So we want to set a calm and peaceful environment, and sometimes even just having some very like Zen classical music in the background. Like, it sounds a little bit corny, but it does really shift the energy for all of you. So you'll notice when you do that, you'll all start speaking more softly and slowly. It's like, it just brings the energy down. And so also I want you to do a check on yourself. Like, how are you showing up? Like, are you, okay, chop, 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 let's go, go, go. Or are you like in the moment with a smile on your face, speaking softly? And just all of those environmental things can really shift that. It may also be a power struggle. And again, there's so many tools in the course that in the Positive Parenting Solutions course that you have at your disposal for that. But I'm so on board with what Katie said about finishing that loop. If you get them involved early on in the shopping and the preparing and the chopping and the cooking process, they're going to want to see that through, or at least watch other people eat it. How awesome is that when they watch the family eat what they have created and the family's like, oh my goodness, this is so great. And like, it's just gives such a sense of significance, which we know belonging and significance are our core emotional needs. And it hits both of those.
That's fabulous. Absolutely. Holly, I'd love to have you in the class. Holly's 11-year-old, only eats a few veggies. How many classes are there? And I guess I didn't address this. So for an 11-year-old, well, there's 32 skill videos for kids. For an 11-year-old, you probably wouldn't need some of the beginner level, but a lot of parents actually take their 10, 11, 12-year-olds through some of the beginner level so that they get peeling and spreading and what else is in there, working with dough. Like, there's just some skills even down with our preschoolers that parents don't want their older kids to miss out on. So there would be a total of 32 lesson options for the kids, and another about 12 to 15 videos where I'm just talking to the parents, like giving you some pep talks, letting you know what might be challenging. A question.
And I love how you have so many tips that, again, totally align with our advanced mealtime module, but take it a lot further. So I mean, I've really been enjoying those too.
Aid says 2 hours at the dinner table. I think it's behavioral. He knows the longer he takes to eat, the more I have no choice to send him to bed. That's like the definition of a power struggle, right? The mom should never have no choice. You always have choices.
And go through the mealtime module in our course on that piece. That's a behavioral thing.
Perfect.
But also, again, I just keep going back to, remember we talk about in step 6, right? You'll never get buy-in without weigh-in, right? And so this is a way, whether it's, making other family decisions, the more that you can get kids to weigh in, you're more likely to get buy-in. This is getting weigh in, if you will. I keep getting my terms confused. This is getting weigh in on the whole mealtime and eating thing by getting them involved in it.
Yes, that's awesome. Oh, shoot, I can't scroll. I just saw a question from Laura. What was it? Where did it go?
Do they prepare a meal during each video?
That's it. Okay. My mouse was like clunk. Not during all videos, no. So again, we're teaching skills, not necessarily recipes. So a lot of times they'll be making something. A lot of times it's a piece of a snack or a piece of a meal. If you have kids in all 3 levels, Laura, there are a couple times where entire meals are created. I'm trying to think. There's one that's a whole breakfast. There's like 2 or 3, I think 3 that are like full dinners, and then the rest will be pieces, appetizers, snacks, all sorts of little pieces. You can see, I'll throw that curriculum map in the chat again if my computer will catch up with my thinking. And you can kind of see, sorry, typing while I'm talking. You can kind of see on the curriculum map, like how the skills fit with recipes and all kind of coordinate together.
The nice thing about that, though, then is they take those skills and they can apply it to any recipe, right? Like, any of their favorite family recipes, grandma's recipes, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the idea, is that by the end of the class, graduates have all the basic skills they need to approach any recipe they come across. I mean, not like creme brulee with the flames, but the just normal basic average recipes. We had a question come in. What about kids who just aren't showing interest in cooking in the kitchen? How do you pique their interest? We talk a lot about motivation in our VIP Facebook group. How do we get those kids motivated? And for me, there's many answers, but my favorite one is to have them cook for someone else. And like Amy just said, that feeling of significance when you see someone eat what you have made and you know that they like it, and you can see that you're like fulfilling a basic human need and nourishing others. There is nothing like it. It makes kids feel so good and they want to come back for more. So if you can, I don't like right now, there might not be a ton of parties going on, but if you can invite the grandparents over, or even, cook for a few friends outside or whatever it is, let them have a taste of how that feels. And that will help with the motivation a lot. To what extent do I keep these strategies when we have guests over for dinner or go to friends for dinner? It's all the same. I don't really change strategies, but remember that we're not earning a dessert, right? So if they're at a friend's for dinner, and I always say, if dessert is offered, you may say yes, please, or no, thank you, but you better not ask for a dessert because that's not polite. That's just our family. Oh my goodness, we are at the 2-hour mark. Let me make sure I didn't miss any like really big bucket questions, because we had a lot of email questions come in that were in these like huge, like where like 20 or 30 of you would ask like a really similar question. Let's see. There are many really, really specific questions, and I'll do my best to try to answer some of those via email. Ladies.
Alan asked, do I need to finish the Positive Parenting Solutions course before starting Katie's? And the answer is definitely not.
Right.
You can be doing these side by side, because again, in the Positive Parenting Solutions course, like I'm teaching you. In Katie's course, she's teaching your kids, right, with your direction. But this all, Alan, just sort of lumps into your mind, body, and soul time, right? And it's just an amazing opportunity for connection and taking time for training in the same event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is great. I mean, really the questions that came in live reflect the questions in email. We talked about leaving the table, getting kids to try new foods, bland foods, the suddenly disliking food that they've eaten for years, dinner taking forever. A couple families asked about when do you stop spoon feeding your child? And I know, I mean, even some people we see this question a lot. 2-year-olds, 8-year-olds are still being spoon fed. I would say, I mean, again, we want our kids to have that positive power bucket and having choice and control. So it's really important for kids to be able to feed themselves. Now, I admit every so often, if my 4-year-old's really distracted, I might find myself spooning a little, but I don't think it's a habit that you want to get into every day, because that's taking the power away from the child.
And again, remember to minimize the distractions around meal times, right? No TV in the kitchen, because they will we lose all mindfulness around eating when that happens. They're just like, eating without even thinking, not on the sofa in front of the TV. Again, making the meal time is sort of calm, and so they can be aware of what they're eating and eating until they're full, and recognizing how the food makes their body feel.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I think we did it. I think we got a lot of them covered. If I missed a very specific question, I apologize. I love that Kelly's making healthy muffins for tomorrow morning. That's great. So good. And then how do we access the discount? I just saw another quick question. So that's at kidscookrealfood.com/PPS for Positive Parenting Solutions. And I have a couple cookbooks you can find on Amazon. And on kitchen stewardship, we have some ebooks. And actually, although, I mean, I got to brag on my son. I wish I had the book here. My 15-year-old just published a book in May. He's one of 5 kid authors who wrote the book Chef Junior. And so if you're looking for a cookbook for kids, and actually for adults too, it's all healthy food. It's pretty allergy friendly. Like some of the kids who wrote it have really severe food allergies. So you'll find a lot more like dairy-free, gluten-free, especially recipes than you would in most kids cookbooks. And it's good stuff. It's high level cooking brought down to a kid's level. So I'll just throw a link in the chat for that if you're interested. My husband just delivered it to me. Chef Junior. I think it has like 100 recipes, gorgeous pictures. Of course, I turned to a page with no picture. But yeah, that's my son's favorite meal. He just made that Monday when we had our neighbors over, margarita pizza. Phew. We did it, Amy. Thank you for inviting all these amazing parents and grandparents.
Yes. So guys, whether you are watching with us here live or you're watching the replay, thank you so much for investing this time. If you're still here, you've been with us for 2 hours. So I'm so grateful for your time. Katie, thank you so much for sharing all of these strategies. These were amazing. I learned a ton. I know everybody else did too. I'm excited for everybody to get into your program, because again, I'm just so all about teaching the kids the skills that they need to be empowered in positive ways. So Anything else from you, Katie, before we wrap up?
Fantastic. I'm just showing this to Angela because she asked, Raylene, I heard you missed the presentation, but don't worry, we're going to upload this and send you an email tonight with the replay link. And then that way you can skip around. Oh, come on.
And you'll have all the links for enrolling and the discount and all that information in the email, Katie?
Yep,
Okay,
absolutely.
awesome.
Yep, the $25.
And for those of you who are watching
loaded.
this from our course down the road, again, the links will be on the same page where you're watching this video, so you can find them there. All right, my friends, thank you so much from Katie and me. We are so grateful. Katie and I am so grateful. Katie and I, we are so grateful. Whatever. And thank you so much. I'll see you in Katie's course, and I'll see you in the Positive Parenting Solutions course as well. Thanks, everybody.
Perfect. Well,
Bye,
Kids
Katie.
Cook Real Food. Thank you again, Amy.